Thank you, everyone. Parties, please take your seats as quickly as possible. It's now 9:05. I'd like to start as soon as we can. A reminder that we're starting with the COM docs, the in-session documents 6, 7 and 8 first thing. Please turn your mind to those. They'll be first thing this morning. Thank you, everyone. We have our quorum, so I will start. Good morning to you on our last day of Committee 2. So I will start with CoP19 COM2 Document 6. I'd like to invite the chair of the working group, Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to you. So I am referring to COP19 COM2 Document 6, which contains draft decisions on role of CITES in reducing risk of future zoonotic disease emergence associated with international wildlife trade. The working group met twice to consider an approach for bringing elements of COP19 Doc 23.2 into decisions on the role of CITES in reducing the risk of future zoonotic disease emergence. The group used the draft decisions in document 23.1 as amended by the Secretariat as the basis for our discussions. At its first meeting, the working group discussed aspects of 23.2 that they would be comfortable bringing into the decisions found in document 23.1. In the discussion, some participants expressed a preference to develop a resolution in a reduced form, but not all participants shared this view. The chair concluded participants were willing to consider elements of the proposed resolution found in Annex 1 of document 23.2 into decisions directed to the parties. There was little support for retaining the draft decisions found in Annex 2 of document 23.2. Based on this discussion, the chair was asked to prepare a first chair's proposal for consideration by the group. The chair prepared such a proposal, shared it electronically, and received excellent comments that allowed the chair to present a revised proposal to the second meeting of the working group. The revised proposal was generally acceptable to the members of the working group with some modifications. So the results of the working group are found in COP19 COM2 Document 6. Based on the discussion, the proposed decisions from document 23.1 were streamlined to be grouped based on the body to whom the decision is directed. This allowed for clarity and streamlining in the reporting functions of each of the bodies. Briefly, I will draw attention to some of the key additions to the draft decisions in COP19 23.1 arising from the discussions of the working group. For decisions directed to the Secretariat, the working group provided some edits, added collaboration with the Convention on Migratory Species, added consultation with the Convention on Biological Diversity, and requested the consultations with expert groups include consideration of a possible CITES advisory body. The group directed decisions to the Animals and Plants Committee to provide recommendations as found in Doc 23.1, as well as consideration of a possible CITES advisory body. The decisions directed to the Standing Committee are as intended in Doc 23.1, with the addition of the request of the committee to consider the establishment of a CITES advisory body to provide guidance to parties. Finally, the most significant additions from the working group were decisions directed to the parties, which are based on the elements of the proposed draft resolution in COP19 Doc 23.2. In conclusion, Chair, I would very much like to thank the members of the working group for the spirit of collaboration as we work towards preparing these draft decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. So I will open the floor for comments from parties, but this gives me an opportunity to make clear how I need things to go today. We still have a full day's working program and 9 ComDocs, so I would like to ask you to keep your comments focused directly on the recommendations of the document that we're considering. I'm very happy to take no comments as support. I really need you to keep things as brief as possible and directly on the matter we're considering. We have run out of time, I'm afraid, for discussions on anything else other than the recommendations in front of us. It's my job to get us there today, and I need your cooperation to do that. I do have Senegal asking for the floor. Senegal, I will give you the floor, but please keep your comments specific to the document in front of us. Thank you. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Pour aller dans le sens de vos orientations, le Sénégal prend la parole juste pour dire que le Sénégal soutient la résolution qui vient d'être communiquée. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. I have the United States. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports the decisions as amended in this document. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Liberia.
Thank you, Chair. Liberia support the recommendation here document. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will take a few more parties, but a reminder that you do not need to take the floor to tell me that you support the documents. I'm very happy to take silence as support. I'm taking comments on anything we need to change in these documents. I will take a few more comments, but just reconsider if you feel like your views have been stated. We're hearing support at the moment for these new decisions. Guinea-Bissau, you have the floor.
Buenos, señor presidente, para decir que a Guinea-Bissau apoya la propuesta. Gracias.
Thank you, Guinea-Bissau. Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We have minor proposal on the decision 19AA. The 19AA little c, we are proposing, instead of collaborate with Convention on Migratory Species to identify practical solution, we are proposing that in order to identify the practical solution, there should be an assessment on the potential risk of pathogen spillover. So we are proposing that immediately after the words migratory species, and then to add, to assess the potential risk of pathogen spillover and identify practical solutions. And then on 19CC, we were wondering the proposal to establish a CITES advisory board. We're just wondering the administrative burden and the terms of reference for this group. We thought that establishing the advisory board at this time is premature. So it's important if, after conducting the assessment and identify the practical solutions, and then that advise us on how we can constitute the advisory board and terms of reference that this board should be assigned to. I submit.
Thank you, Tanzania. I do note that the direction to the Standing Committee is to consider the establishment, so I would be hopeful that the matters you've identified would be considered by the Standing Committee in their consideration. So if there's no edits to that paragraph, I think we note Tanzania's points about the important things that the Standing Committee would consider. Chile, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Nosotros quisiéramos solicitar enmendar a través del texto en las decisiones cuando se dice mitigar o reducir el riesgo de derrame y transmisión de patógenos. En vez de mitigar o reducir, quisiéramos usar la palabra prevenir. Nosotros pensamos que lo que nosotros tenemos que hacer dentro del marco de esta convención es prevenir el riesgo de derrame y transmisión de patógenos. Eso está en la 19AA y después están en varios otros párrafos de las propuestas de decisión. Y también quisiéramos expresar nuestro apoyo a lo ya señalado por la delegación anterior respecto a la creación de un órgano asesor. Estamos muy conscientes de la importancia de hacer un uso eficiente, eficaz, sin duplicar el trabajo que hacen otras organizaciones. Y en ese sentido nos parece que no es necesario que CITES cree un nuevo órgano asesor, sino que más bien se podría usar ya el amplio desarrollo de este tema que existe en otros organismos especializados. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chile. I note your potentially significant comment on the language around mitigation versus prevention, and I wonder if I can request whether Canada might be able to reflect upon that choice of language. Thank you, Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll start with the second point on the advisory body. The points raised by colleagues from Tanzania and Chile reflect a level of the discussion that was had in the working group, and thus it was decided to first ask the Secretariat to consult with some of the bodies undertaking work in this area, and then seeking the advice of the Animals and Plants Committee, and so hence the idea of considering. I think the points raised by colleagues are a good part of the consideration that we are asking the Standing Committee to do. On the question of mitigate versus prevent, we did not have a discussion on that, so the working group, I take from that the working group was comfortable with mitigate in the language. From a Canadian perspective, I would prefer mitigate or at least include both terms. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. So I would invite, if parties would like to reflect upon the last few interventions to help me conclude your views. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia would support Canada's suggestion of including both prevent and mitigate as a way to address. I think both makes a more appropriate approach.
Thank you, Australia. Senegal's asking for the floor again to reflect, I hope, on the prevent and mitigate piece. Senegal, you have the floor.
Oui, le Chili avait trouvé pas nécessaire qu'on mette en place un organe chargé de veiller et de se contenter des résultats des autres organisations. Je crois que non, c'est dangereux. La CITES doit se donner les moyens de pouvoir coordonner avec les autres et de communiquer aux parties les résultats liés à ces zoonoses. Nous restons sur la proposition du Canada et également sur cette question. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. Not seeing any other requests for the floor, and having seen Canada's suggestion to prevent and mitigate supported, I would propose that we would make those amendments in the appropriate places through the draft decisions. Don't see any concerns with that. Thank you, Chile, Canada and Australia for coming to that constructive recommendation. So my conclusion on COP19 Committee 2 Document 6 is that we agree the draft decisions contained in it, with the addition from Tanzania, who suggested that in 19AA(c), we also include a piece to assess the potential risk of pathogen spillover when we collaborate with the Convention on Migratory Species, and the switch, or the insertion of where we talk about mitigating the risk of pathogen spillover, we also speak about preventing and mitigating, or prevent and mitigate as the appropriate formulation in the sentence. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the working group for your constructive work. I was pleased to hear the report from Canada. Chile, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Solo para puntualizar que prevenir y mitigar se use siempre cuando se hable del riesgo de derrame y transmisión. Hay algunos casos en que se habla de mitigar, en otros casos se habla de reducir. pero quisiéramos que en todos los casos se hablara de prevenir y mitigar. Gracias.
Thank you, Chile. That is my conclusion based on our discussions. That is the way we will go forward. So it's my conclusion that this is the agreement of the committee. And I do apologise, observers. On these ComDocs, I probably am not in a position to take interventions because they are the results of working groups, and I hope that you have been involved in the working groups. Just for time today, my general intention is to continue to take observers on the agenda items, but on the ComDocs, I'm unlikely to be able to do that. So I would like to move on to COP19. Come to document 7. Draft decisions on the review of the National Ivory Action Plans process. I understand this will be introduced by Belgium. Belgium, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The working group on the review of NIAPs met once during lunchtime on the 18th of November, and I want to thank the members for their active participation. The mandate of the working group was to consider first whether or not the terms of reference for review of the NIAP process should be developed during this meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and if so, if agreed, this should be done to develop these terms of reference. The working group agreed to draft the terms of reference at the present meeting and then discussed which elements of paragraph 7 of document 66.7 should be reflected in the terms of reference. We discussed each item and discussed whether or not it should be taken on board in the terms of reference. Following the meeting of the working group, as chair, I drafted the language for the agreed upon elements based upon the reflections made for these identified elements during the meeting. Some further amendments were done on the initial text, taking into consideration input provided by the working group members via email. And the result is now before you all for your consideration and possibly approval. The working group did not discuss the set of decisions itself, as this was not part of our mandate. So the terms of reference are just inserted into the initial set of decisions, and no substantial changes were made to the draft decisions. This being said, I would advise the parties to consider if it would not be more appropriate to not indicate the timing on as to which standing committee meeting the report should be presented to. In the current language, it's mentioned SC 77, but perhaps this timing is a bit too ambitious. So this is just food for thought for the parties to consider on. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium, and thank you for chairing this working group. Parties, you have the floor. I see United States of America, US, followed by Japan.
Thank you, Chair. In considering further and reviewing document COP19 COM7, we believe that it will be useful to consider the expert consultation in the review as we had recommended in document COP19 Doc 66.7. Therefore, we recommend including an additional instruction in the terms of reference as follows. Consider whether the consultation with independent external experts contemplated in the guidelines contained in Annex 3 to Resolution Conf 10.10, revised COP18, can be strengthened. And thank you to the working group for your efforts.
United States, may I have that just one more time, please? United States.
Yes, Chair. Consider whether the consultation with independent external experts contemplated in the guidelines contained in Annex 3 to Resolution Conf 10.10, revised COP18, can be strengthened.
Thank you, United States. Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to thank all members who participated in the working group, especially the chair to compile this COM.7. Japan supports this document. However, we have a minor comment on small Roman 4 of subparagraph A of 19AA. We wonder whether the term in particular is necessary, and we do not support the US proposal either. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan, European Union, and then Senegal, European Union.
Thank you, Chair. And I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We would like to thank all the participants in the working group for very constructive discussion. And we can support the result of the working group that was presented by the Chair. On the point that was mentioned by the Chair, we would agree that we should not be too prescriptive at which meeting of the Standing Committee this item must be considered, as this would, of course, also depend on when the review would be ready to be considered. So we would suggest to keep the mandate of the Standing Committee flexible in order to allow for consideration either at SC 77 or SC 78. So with that in mind, in draft decision 19CC, A, which was not part of the mandate of the working group to consider, we would suggest to keep it very simple and just ask the Standing Committee to review the report and then prepare a report by the Standing Committee for the COP20. And in terms of concrete suggestions, we would, in order to do that, have to delete in 19AA B, little b, at the end of the paragraph for consideration at SC 77. And in the decision 19CC directed to the Standing Committee, we would have to strike out in little a at its 77th meeting, and then at the end strike out also the language, the rest of the language, determine if further evaluation of the NIA process is needed, and so on, because that further action would depend on when the issue will be at the Standing Committee. So then in its entirety, the paragraph 19CC directed to the Standing Committee would then read, the Standing Committee shall A, review the report called for in decision 19AA, and B, prepare a report along with its recommendation for updating the NIA process for consideration by the Conference of the Parties at its 20th meeting. On the suggestion from the United States, for the EU and its member states, it was okay to leave this issue out because it has been extensively discussed in the past, and we have agreed language on that. So we'd prefer not to reopen that debate. If there is broad support for the US proposal, however, we would also be in agreement to, in order to compromise and have a consensual decision on this, be okay with including it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, European Union, for making your perspectives clear. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Sénégal tenait à remercier le groupe pour les résultats auxquels ils sont arrivés, mais tout en demandant l'inclusion du commentaire fait par les États-Unis, parce que c'est un débat qui ne date pas d'aujourd'hui, et c'est bon que la Convention s'ouvre à des consultants indépendants sur la question. Ça ne fera que nous regarder dans ce qu'on est en train de faire pour trouver des solutions à ce problème épineux. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. My final party speaker is the United Kingdom. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports the draft decisions proposed in COM2 Document 7. However, we agree with the United States that it would be useful to consider expert consultation in the review. The UK therefore also supports the recommendation of the United States for an additional instruction in the terms of reference to address this. We would also agree with the proposal of the European Union to amend the decisions to allow some flexibility for when the review is considered by the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I do have Singapore asking for the floor. I will take Singapore, but I think we have a way forward here. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Singapore does not support to include the suggestion by US. This was already discussed extensively, as EU has mentioned, and agreed by the members in the working group. So we do not wish for it to be open again. Thank you.
Okay, Singapore, China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China support the opinion of Japan and Singapore. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. I will just take a moment to look back at the comments from the parties. So not seeing any other requests for the floor, specifically on the amendment proposed by the United States. I have heard a little bit of support, but generally opposition to that. So my conclusion is that we will not include that reference. And so we have had some amendments that were suggested by Belgium as chair of the working group and picked up by the European Union that relate to the timing for the consideration of the Standing Committee. So I think that we do agree to the suggestion of the European Union that we strike language around the specific meetings at which the Standing Committee will consider reports or undertake reviewing of reports. So that involves striking in Decision 19AA little b, consideration at Standing Committee 77. It also, as the EU pointed out, in Decision 19CC, the Standing Committee shall A, review the report called for in Decision 19AA. That would be the remaining language in that paragraph, subparagraph. And then we would retain the language in subparagraph B. This is my conclusion, that the committee agrees to the amended draft decisions in COP19 COM2 7 as amended. Okay, so our final in-session ComDoc this morning is COP19 COM2 8 on pangolins. And I'd like to invite the United Kingdom. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to thank the Secretariat for COP19 COM2 Doc 8, which we consider reflects the majority view of the parties we heard earlier in this committee. We also thank parties for their overwhelming support for the UK document on this matter earlier this week. The UK places great value on finding consensus. Whilst it is not always possible, we consider it is important to do all we can to find that common ground. Decisions taken by consensus deliver better outcomes in the long term. They build better partnerships, they enhance implementation, and they strengthen our convention. But consensus does require compromise. And it is in the spirit of compromise, Chair, that we have discussed the proposal COP19 COM2 Doc 8 with China as a party that expressed clear concerns, and we prepared a text that we hope would be an acceptable compromise package. and I emphasise the word package. With your indulgence, Chair, I would read the proposed changes out for parties to consider.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Yes, please.
Thank you. Firstly, in preambular paragraph 4, we propose adding the word primarily before commercial international trade. Secondly, we propose paragraph 1, subparagraph D reads as follows. Parties in whose jurisdiction there is a legal domestic market for specimens of pangolins that is contributing to poaching or illegal trade take all necessary legislative, regulatory and enforcement measures, and then we would strike to close their domestic markets for commercial trade in pangolin specimens, and we would insert to prevent such markets from contributing to poaching or illegal trade, and then it would continue and report. We would strike the word such, and then we would insert actions in this regard. We would strike closures, and then we would continue to the Secretariat. So I will read the whole paragraph as a clean version. Parties in whose jurisdiction there is a legal domestic market for specimens of pangolins that is contributing to poaching or illegal trade take all necessary legislative, regulatory and enforcement measures to prevent such markets from contributing to poaching or illegal trade and report actions in this regard to the Secretariat. Thirdly, in paragraph 4, we propose replacing urges with further encourages. And finally, we propose paragraph 11 read, recommends that consumer states of pangolin specimens, and we would strike, where necessary and appropriate, remove references to parts and derivatives of pangolins from the official pharmacopoeia and include, and we would insert, promote the use of, and the paragraph would continue from there. Chair, we consider this to be an acceptable compromise package, and we thank our colleagues from China for their willingness to seek an agreement on this matter and for all others who have engaged so positively on this matter. I would urge parties to think about these changes carefully. There is compromise in this for everyone, but also greater ambition, and I hope greater action. Please do weigh carefully what we stand to gain from consensus and what we stand to lose from division. And let's not make perfect the enemy of the good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I see China, followed by Benin. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China has long attached great importance to pangolin conservation. We welcome the revised version proposed by UK, where we have shown our flexibility and the will of cooperation. The ultimate goal of all our efforts is to secure a better future for all pangolin species. So we hope the committee too can accept it by consensus. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais d'entrée remercier le UK et puis la Chine pour les efforts qui ont été faits pour retrouver un consensus. Mais je pense que les efforts qui sont faits pour la conservation du pangolin nécessitent que nous puissions prendre des décisions vraiment fermes quant à l'existence de marchés intérieurs. Le Bénin reconnaît les efforts qui sont faits dans les différents États pour réguler les marchés, mais reconnaît également donc, la faiblesse qui existe dans les dispositifs donc, de contrôle. Et sur cette base, souhaiterait toujours maintenir son soutien à la proposition initiale qui demande à ce que les marchés puissent être fermés. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Benin. Nepal, followed by Burkina Faso. You have the floor, Nepal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards of this document, Nepal supports China and UK amendment proposed in the direction of conserving pangolin. Thank you, Madam. I submit.
Thank you, Nepal, Burkina Faso, and then Togo, Burkina Faso.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Nous avons constaté effectivement l'effort de trouver un consensus avec la nouvelle proposition de l'Union du Royaume-Uni qui voudrait en fait une régulation de ce commerce pour essayer quand même de régler le problème de commerce illicite. Mais cette proposition, de mon point de vue, semble ne pas pouvoir régler notre problème, si bien que le Burkina Faso suggère de maintenir la proposition initiale qui était déjà là. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I have quite some parties asking for the list, for the floor. I would like to take you. I would like to pause my list for now because it's quite extensive. I would invite your comments as to whether or not I will take more nuanced comments than this, but specifically I'm interested in whether or not you would support the original proposal or the proposal that the United Kingdom proposed that has been supported by China. So I will take Togo and then Gabon.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Sans commentaire pour aller plus vite, je vais dire seulement que je soutiens la proposition initiale à l'instar du Bénin et du Burkina Faso. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. My list is changing. Next on my list is Gabon, followed by Malaysia. Gabon, you have the floor.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente. Je remercie également le groupe de travail pour la recherche de consensus sur ce sujet, mais nous préférons soutenir la proposition initiale. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. Malaysia.
To be succinct, we support the original proposal, also supported by Benin, Burkina Faso, Togo, and Gabon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malaysia, Zambia, and then Liberia. Zambia, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Zambia supports the amendment as suggested by the UK and China. That's our submission.
Thank you, Zambia. Liberia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Liberia supports the original document. Thank you.
Thank you, Liberia. Chile.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Chile apoya la enmienda sugerida por Reino Unido y apoyada por China. Gracias.
Thank you, Chile. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. The EU and its member states agree that consensus and compromise are important. At the same time, we do think that we have to be consistent with our approach in other cases, and in particular on ivory. We would therefore prefer to keep the language as proposed in the document from the working group. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bangladesh supports the original document, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate the value of consensus and chipping away at the problem systematically. So we therefore support the UK and China amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Eswatini. United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports the adoption of the original amendments to the resolution. We remain concerned about all markets for pangolin that drive trade and contravention of CITES. We believe it strikes a fair compromise. In the interest of consensus, we would not withhold our support for the UK amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I have Kenya and then Singapore. I've closed my list. I have Kenya and Singapore because I think I'm getting a picture here. So I have Kenya and then Singapore, please. Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Kenya would like to maintain the original language, as this will be more stronger in trying to deal with the issue of pangolin trafficking, particularly for those countries that have domestic market. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. Singapore, are you having trouble with your microphone? Can we give Singapore the floor? I think we're having trouble with Singapore's microphone. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Singapore supports the proposed amendments made by the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Singapore. So I've closed my list of parties. What I am hearing, despite the UK's amendments, I am hearing majority support for the original document. So the original CoP19 COM2 document 8 language. By my count, I've been taking note. So it's my conclusion, unless somebody would like to oppose my conclusion, is that the committee agrees to the amendments to Resolution Conf 17.10, Rev CoP19 on conservation of and trade in pangolins as outlined in CoP19 COM28. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China wants to apply for voting for your decision, okay?
Thank you, everyone. China has called for a vote, so we will vote. I have 3 parties asking for the floor. If you would like to comment on the method of voting, I will take you. So if your comment is not on the method of voting, please press off your button. So the rules of procedure say that a party can call for a vote, and on that basis we vote. So I will. Okay, I don't have anyone asking for the floor. So as we did yesterday, we will first vote on the amendment proposal from the United Kingdom. In the rules of procedure, we vote on an amendment proposal first. So the United Kingdom has introduced their proposal this morning with their amendment. We all followed that language, I think. So I do have 2 parties requesting the floor. Is it on the method of voting? Nigeria, do you have a comment on the method of voting?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We didn't get a chance at the first instance. We also support the voting, and we support the original document. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigeria. We will vote, so I do not need to hear any more interventions from parties unless you would like to change the method of voting. But not seeing anyone commenting on that. So this is a vote on COP19 COM2 document 8, which is prepared on the basis of documents COP19 docs 71.1 and 71.2. It's a vote on the amendment proposal by the United Kingdom. The voting type is by normal vote, and the vote of the European Union will be cast by the member states. The individual member states, to be clear. Since this is a vote on a substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. Thank you, technicians. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Forty seconds are up. The ballot is now closed. Technicians, please show the result on the main screen. So the amendment proposal is not adopted by a 2/3 majority. Thank you, everyone. So as the amendment proposal was not adopted by a 2/3 majority, the rules of procedure say that we now move to a vote on the original proposal. So the amendments to Resolution Conf 17.10, Rev COP 19 on conservation of trade in pangolins, as originally outlined in COP 19 COM2 Doc 8. So we will prepare for that vote. Chile, I will give you the floor since I have not initiated the voting. Chile. Chile, I have a request for the floor. Do you need the floor?
Ahí está. Gracias, señora presidenta. Sí, solamente quisiéramos ver los resultados porque no se dijo que fuera una votación secreta. Entonces quisiéramos ver reflejada la votación. Gracias.
Yes, Chile, you have called me out. I missed my procedure. I'm looking at the technicians to see if we can go back. Thank you, technicians. Thank you, technicians. I do have two parties requesting the floor. I've had Mauritania.
Oui, merci Madame la Présidente. Moi, je voudrais savoir la deuxième étape là consisterait en quoi? Est-ce que c'est voter sur la fermeture des marchés à Pangolin? Et pourquoi pas ne pas gagner du temps? Comme l'amendement a été rejeté, pourquoi pas ne pas valider la fermeture des marchés directement pour un gain de temps? Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Mauritania. So the rules of procedure are clear as it relates to amendment proposals on original proposals. So we are following the rules of procedure and we will come to a vote on COP19 COM2 Document 8, the amendments to the resolution contained in that document. That's what we will be voting on. I have the UK asking for the floor. I will go to the UK, but I would like to move to this vote because I'm required to take it. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. And we would just like to clarify our vote for the purpose of the record. The UK presented this as a consensus package, so acceptable to us only as a consensus package, and therefore, clearly, without consensus in the room, we voted against the package. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. So we will move to the vote that I have indicated. This is a vote on COP19 COM2 Document 8, prepared on the basis of documents COP19 Documents 71.1 and 71.2. The voting type is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the individual member states. Since this is a vote on a substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. Thank you, technicians. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Technicians, please, 40 seconds are up. The ballot is now closed. Technicians, please show the result on the main screen. So the proposal is adopted by a 2/3 majority in Committee 2. Technicians, please display the individual votes. Thank you, technicians. I would like to move on. I have one request for the floor. I have two requests for the floor. Briefly, China and then Japan. China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a statement. Any decision which is interfering our national sovereignty will not be acceptable to China forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, China. Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan would like to reiterate our concern that CITES mandate is to regulate trade in endangered species of wild fauna and flora, which occurs internationally, and not domestic transaction. And therefore, measures for domestic control should be decided by the party. Although Japan believes domestic control of CITES Appendix 1 listed species is very important for effective CITES implementation. Secondly, the Article 8 of the Convention, the measure to be taken by the contracting parties should be considered in light of the different circumstances in each country. Japan would like to request our concern to be noted on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. Your statement will be noted. I do have one more party asking for the floor. I am going to move on so that we can start our program again. Senegal, briefly, you have the floor.
Oui, merci Madame. Le Sénégal se félicite pour les résultats auxquels nous sommes arrivés et encourage les partis pour des soucis de démocratie d'accepter les décisions qui sont prises. Parce que si la CITES intervient sur le commerce international, mais il y a une connexion entre le commerce international et le marché local. Les deux ne sont pas dissociables. C'est en ce sens que nous disons qu'il faut soutenir la résolution à laquelle nous sommes parvenus. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. So we are moving on. So I will indicate to you now what ComDocs I will be taking after lunch. We have several to go. So before we turn back to document 41 on electronic systems, after lunch we will take COM9 on the basis of document 66.2.2 prepared by Kenya with inputs from the United States. I will take COM10 on specimens produced through biotechnology. I will take COM11, CITES and forests. COM12 on rhinoceroses. COM13 on wildlife crime enforcement and support in West and Central Africa, and COM14 on the budget and work program for 2023 to 2025. I did also want to note that I hope we will return to our discussions on the language strategy this afternoon in our afternoon session. So please be present for those discussions. So moving to document COP19 Doc 41 on electronic systems. We were in the middle of this last night. I've noted the amendments we've heard so far, so I will open the floor once again to parties, but I will implore upon you, please keep your interventions focused on the recommendations of the papers. I don't like the thought to have to interrupt people today, but there is a lot of work ahead of us. So I have Benin requesting the floor. Benin.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Donc, je voudrais juste dire qu'on n'a pas bien suivi l'ensemble des documents qui ont été listés. Est-ce que c'est possible que nous l'ayons à l'écran à un moment donné? Merci.
They will be displayed on the screen at lunchtime, but for simplicity, it is every ComDoc that is published on the website for Committee 2. So 9 through budget, whatever budget is numbered, every single one of them. That's what we're doing. So with that, I have Bolivia requesting the floor. Bolivia.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Agradecemos al Comité Permanente por la presentación de este documento. Consideramos que proporciona orientaciones altamente relevantes. Sin embargo, en el anexo 2, inciso F, se sugiere la supresión del texto como los veterinarios, en el entendido de que los profesionales implicados en el comercio y la gestión de especies silvestres provienen de diferentes ámbitos de formación y, por lo tanto, algunos términos deben de manejarse desde una perspectiva más abarcativa. Así también, cuando sea posible y apropiado, bajo un enfoque de construcción de espacios más participativos, equitativos e inclusivos en la toma y construcción de decisiones, así como en los procesos de capacitación, formación y socialización de la información, se sugiere incluir el siguiente párrafo. garanticen en la medida de lo posible que los representantes de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales implicados en la implementación y seguimiento de los procedimientos reciban formación sobre las CITES y el papel que desempeñan en la aplicación de la Convención y el cumplimiento de las leyes nacionales pertinentes en concordancia y complementación a sus usos y costumbres. Este párrafo también se sugiere en el entendido de que los IPLCs están implicados en general todos los días directamente con la gestión de las especies silvestres y la gestión de sus territorios y zonas de vida. Por último, el proceso de formación de una persona no solo puede estar condicionado a la meritocracia académica, que es un criterio altamente importante, como se indica en el presente documento, pero se debe considerar que hay diferentes formas de construcción de conocimiento y saberes, como ocurre en los IPLC. Asimismo, en muchos casos, la no obtención de un título académico puede obedecer a las reducidas oportunidades que puede tener una persona por desigualdades, por ejemplo, de tipo económico y social. Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Bolivia. I may need to come back to you for some of that language. I'm hearing it translated into English and it's just a little bit difficult to follow. We might come back to you so I can hear that clearly. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente. Queremos expresar nuestro apoyo a la propuesta de decisiones, dado que contiene compromisos de evaluaciones de riesgo para desarrollar perfiles específicos para los especímenes de especies incluidas en los apéndices de las CITES, que son frecuentemente objeto de comercio, exportadas o importadas, ayudando a las labores de control e intercambio de información, lo que va a repercutir en la actualización de los aspectos de control y trazabilidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Peru. Argentina.
Muchas gracias. Queremos dejar asentado que la República Argentina apoya la aprobación de enmiendas y decisiones propuestas en el documento y asimismo queremos transmitir que actualmente, junto a otros organismos del Estado, estamos trabajando para implementar la emisión digital de permisos CITES en el marco de la ventanilla única de comercio exterior, que es una herramienta que busca optimizar y unificar digitalmente la información y documentación para cumplir con los trámites aduaneros. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Argentina. The final two parties I have on my list are India and Brazil. So I will take India and then Brazil. India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India appreciates the Secretariat and Standing Committee for preparing and presenting the CoP19 Doc 41. India, in principle, aligns with the proposal, particularly with the recommendations and suggestions made by the Secretariat and given in the Annexure 1, 2, and 3 of CoP19 Doc 41. We also find it suitable to add a preambular paragraph at this juncture, keeping in view the importance and role of digital transactions and modalities in implementing the CITES, and also to combat wildlife crime and illegal trade of wild species of flora and fauna. Therefore, it is suggested the last phrase of the preambular paragraph may be modified as, quote, and in combating wildlife crime and illegal trade of wild flora and fauna, unquote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. I will take Brazil and then Indonesia. Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brazil thanks the Standing Committee for preparing Document 41. Brazil supports the adoption of Document 41 with Secretariat amendments, as well do not oppose to all amendments by the other parts that stated until now. Since 2006, Brazil have adopted a national digital system for emission on-site permits and continue working in the integration with other national exporting systems in order to align with CITES recommendations. Brazil thinks that identifying possibilities on sharing experiences, training opportunities, and best practice related to non-commercial movement of musical instruments, as stated by US in the COP19 information document 80 are very relevant, especially to improve the tracing and enforcement to combat pau-Brasília equinata finished products illegal traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. So my final party that I will take, Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia support decision of the CoP19 DOC 41. However, we does not yet have a fully integrated only system on authentication and permit control. Currently, an integrated system, Indonesian National Single Window, has been developed between several institutions such as Customs, Ministry of Trade, CITES Management Authority, which can be used to strengthen the checking, verification, and controlling permit or document related to CITES specimen or border control. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. So if you'll give me a moment just to sum up, make sure I have captured all of the amendments so that I can come back to you and we can walk through the document. Okay, thank you everyone. This is a complicated document. I did want to come back to Bolivia for your amendment to Annex 2, your additional paragraph. If you could read that through very slowly, we might be able to capture it and so, just accurately. So Bolivia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. El texto indica lo siguiente: garanticen, en la medida de lo posible, que los representantes de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales implicados en la implementación o seguimiento de estos procedimientos reciban formación sobre las CITES y el papel que desempeñan en la aplicación de la Convención y el cumplimiento de las leyes nacionales pertinentes, en concordancia y complementación a sus usos y costumbres.
One more time, please, Bolivia, really slowly, as slowly as you can, because I'm hearing in English, so I'm hearing it translated. I want to make sure I capture it. Bolivia again.
Garanticen, en la medida de lo posible, que los representantes de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales implicados en la implementación o seguimiento de estos procedimientos reciban formación sobre las CITES y el papel que desempeñan en la aplicación de la Convención y el cumplimiento de las leyes nacionales pertinentes, en concordancia y complementación a sus usos y costumbres.
Thank you, Bolivia. I do have that. I've had the United States requesting the floor. United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States would like to propose an alternative to the text that Bolivia put forward, please. In the amendments 11.3, Annex 2, paragraph F, little f, we'd like to suggest inserting IPLCs and before professional. We feel like that would adequately address the concern. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I think the language that Bolivia had proposed was representatives of Indigenous peoples and local communities, so I think we might stick with that. Bolivia, would that address your suggestion to include a specific reference to representatives of Indigenous people and local communities involved?
La sugerencia iba en el sentido que en el índice F, la capacitación está supeditada a profesionales, ¿no? Y estos profesionales van a tener certificación y hay que tomar en cuenta que algunas personas de los IPLCs no tienen ese tipo de título académico, lo que puede limitar el acceso a estos procesos de capacitación. Es por eso que se sugirió un párrafo aparte.
Thank you, Bolivia. So I have heard your points, and I think there's a way forward, because your points are about professional practice and the ongoing accreditation language. So as a way forward, I'd like to suggest that we could have the insertion from the United States to representatives from Indigenous peoples and local communities as they've suggested, and that we could end the paragraph with compliance with relevant national laws. And that might be a compromise way forward. So we would delete the reference to professional practice and ongoing accreditation. I'd like to find a way forward on this because I think we all understand what we're trying to achieve here. Not seeing any comments on that suggestion, so I will take silence as agreement to my proposal. Okay, I think I am ready to sum up. Thank you everyone for your interventions. So my conclusion is that Committee 2 agrees to the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 12.3 Rev CoP 18 on permits and certificates outlined in Annex 1. With the Secretariat's suggestion of an additional preambular paragraph as they've outlined in paragraph B of their comments. On the preambular paragraph in Annex 1 beginning recognising, the first one, we have the suggestion from India to, at the end of the paragraph, and in combating wildlife crime and illegal trade in wild fauna and flora, so I think we can agree that. In operative paragraph 3D, we had the proposal from Kenya to consider adopting the standards recommended in the CITES electronic permitting toolkit. Noting that this is just a recommends chapeau, I think that's acceptable. We had a proposal from the United Arab Emirates to delete paragraph T little I, but in general I've heard support for this amendment, so I would like to suggest, based on discussions, that we could add where possible receive information from the importing party. So that might address the UAE's concerns, again noting that this is just recommendations for parties issuing electronic permits. So hopefully that is acceptable. So that is Annex 1. In Annex 2, I think that we agree the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 11.3, Rev CoP 18 on compliance and enforcement, with the amendment to paragraph F to insert language after, to the extent possible, that we would go with representatives of Indigenous peoples and local communities and professionals. We would strike such as veterinarians on the suggestion of Bolivia, and we would also strike as part of their professional practice and ongoing accreditation to address some of the concerns of Bolivia. I think we agree the draft decisions on risk assessment and analysis in Annex 3 and the draft decisions on electronic systems and information technology in Annex 4. With the additional paragraph directed to the Standing Committee suggested by the United States. So it would be new paragraph, Standing Committee shall, in consultation with the Secretariat, undertake the following tasks. New paragraph, consider ways in which electronic CITES permitting systems can simplify procedures for the non-commercial movement of musical instruments. I also conclude that we agree to delete decisions 18.125 to 18.128 and 18.130 to 18.131. Thank you. So we will take COP19 document 50, which is the last document on yesterday's agenda. We have an hour and a half roughly, and I'd like to move as quickly as we can now because we will spend some time after lunch on the COM docs, and just we've had a few questions. There is no time to extend this evening. At 5 o'clock, we are done. Please bear with me as I move you along quickly. So COP19 document 50, disposal of confiscated specimens. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee, so I'll invite the Chair of the Standing Committee to introduce the document. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll make my introduction as short as the document. COP19 Doc 50 is on disposal of confiscated specimens, and it speaks to decisions 18.159 through 18.164. In the fourth paragraph, there is a report on activities the Secretariat has undertaken, including the development of a dedicated web page on the CITES website. And the Standing Committee invites the Conference of Parties to adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 of the document and to delete decisions 18.159 to 18.164. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Standing Committee. Parties, the floor is open for your comments on the recommendations on the document, noting that I've said that I will take silence as support in an effort to continue moving. So, Benin, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je tiens à remercier donc le comité permanent pour avoir préparé ce document qui est essentiel et qui répond à une difficulté que nous rencontrons dans nos États. La gestion des spécimens confisqués est un problème. Nous sommes régulièrement en face de cette situation. Donc, et nous soutenons donc les recommandations qui ont été faites. Cependant, nous aurions bien aimé que la destination donc, des animaux vivants confisqués, lorsque l'organe de gestion n'a pas la capacité de prendre en charge ces animaux, que la destination soit clairement définie, qu'il y ait des orientations claires et que les pays qui peut-être ont déjà de l'expérience dans ces genres de situations puissent également donc, les partager pour que les parties qui rencontrent donc de telles difficultés puissent s'en inspirer. Donc le Bénin soutient ce document et si possible que des clarifications ou des orientations soient données aux États en matière de gestion des spécimens vivants confisqués.
Thank you, Benin. United States, and then Niger, United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States supports the proposed draft decisions presented in Annex to the document. We welcome the addition of the dedicated webpage compiling existing resources and information on networks on the management of seized and confiscated live animals, now available on the Secretariat's website. The proposed draft decisions are renewals of decisions 18.159 to 18.164, and so we are in support of their deletion. On the matter of disposal of confiscated specimens, as we noted at SC 74, we also see an opportunity to review and update guidance on disposal of live Appendix 1 species in Annex 1 of Resolution COP 17.8 to ensure that the text accurately reflects the intention that, 1, those involved in the illegal or irregular transactions that gave rise to the confiscation cannot obtain the animal or their offspring. 2, the transfer does not compromise the objective of the confiscation. And 3, the transfer will not increase illegal, irregular, or otherwise undesired trade in the species. The conservation potential of any transfer or breeding loan must be carefully weighed against even the smallest risk in stimulating trade, which would further endanger the wild populations of the species. To this end, we recommend adding an additional draft decision 19FF directed at the Standing Committee, which would read, the Standing Committee shall review question 7 of the decision tree analysis captivity in Annex 1 of Resolution COMP 17.8 with intention to ensuring there are no grounds for concerns that any transfer of Appendix 1 species will stimulate further illegal or irregular trade or benefit those involved in the illegal or irregular transaction that gave rise to confiscation and recommend revisions to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties as appropriate. I can read that again if you'd like.
We will absolutely need that again. United States, much slower, please.
The Standing Committee shall review question 7 of the decision tree analysis captivity in Annex 1 of Resolution COMP 17.8 with attention to ensuring there are no grounds for concerns that any transfer of Appendix 1 species.
I'm sorry, the United States. Can you start again slowly from with attention to assuring, please? Thank you.
My apologies, Chair. With attention to ensuring there are no grounds for concern that any transfer of Appendix 1 species will stimulate further illegal or irregular trade or benefit those involved in the illegal or irregular transaction that gave rise to confiscation, and recommend revisions to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties as appropriate.
Okay, I just got that. Thank you, United States. So the final party asking for the floor is Niger. Niger, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, le Niger remercie le secrétariat pour avoir présenté ce document qui est d'une utilité importante pour notre pays. Et la question spécifique s'aligne sur plusieurs aspects dont nous allons souligner rapidement. Il s'agit vraiment des orientations, nous voulons vraiment les orientations du secrétariat pour pouvoir faciliter, pour qu'il puisse nous aider à savoir comment on peut aider à ce que des espèces qui ne font pas partie des aires de répartition, qui sont saisies, quelles orientations elles peuvent nous aider pour les utilisations. Et aussi les techniques de manipulation et de gestion des spécimens qui ne font pas partie des aires de répartition des pays qui ont confisqué ces spécimens, mais aussi l'utilisation et la gestion des stocks qui est une question cruciale au niveau des pays. Et donc nous demandons vivement au secrétariat de nous aider davantage dans ce sens pour qu'on puisse mieux comprendre ces processus afin qu'on puisse y aboutir à des meilleurs résultats. Je vous remercie beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Niger. I will take Israel. Israel, you have the floor. That's my final party. Thank you, Israel.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support the amendment that has been proposed by the United States, as we believe this would be useful in closing a conspicuous loophole which otherwise would be in the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. So I do not have any more parties. I will take one observer. I have had AZA asking for the floor. AZA, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, Wildlife Conservation Society, and San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. We believe that the disposal of confiscated live specimens is a challenging issue facing law enforcement agencies and conservation organizations in many parts of the world. This issue is complex and requires a cooperative and coordinated response between key stakeholders. AZA was pleased to provide the Secretariat with information about the Southern California Wildlife Confiscations Network, a pilot program to provide care and welfare for animals confiscated from illegal trade. We will continue to share information about our network as it becomes operational and grows into a national program. We recommend the parties adopt the draft decisions proposed in Document 50 and encourage the Secretariat to provide additional materials to assist parties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, AZA. I apologise, observers, I will not be able to take any more interventions. So based on that discussion, it's my conclusion that the committee agrees to the draft decisions 19AA to 19EE contained in Annex 1 to the document, with the additional paragraph from 19FF directed to the Standing Committee that we've heard from the United States. I will just read it one more time. The Standing Committee shall review question 7 of the decision tree analysis, captivity, in Annex 1 of Resolution Conf 17.8, with attention to ensuring there are no grounds for concern that any transfer of Appendix 1 species will stimulate further illegal or irregular trade or benefit those involved in the illegal or irregular trade or irregular transaction that gave rise to the confiscation, and make recommendations to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties as appropriate. I also conclude that we agree to delete decisions 18.159 to 18.164. Thank you. So we will move to COP19 document 53, which is our first one for this morning's schedule. COP19 document 53, review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source, has been submitted by the Standing Committee. I'll invite the Chair of the Standing Committee to introduce the document. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to introduce document 53 on review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source. And this document is in reference to decision 18.172, 18.173. I'll note that due to the postponement of the regular meetings of the Animals and Plants Committee, they were unable to fulfill the work under decision 18.172 and have recommended extension of these decisions. So recognizing the complexity of the work mandated, the 72nd meeting of the Standing Committee established a working group chaired by Spain, and I would like to give my thanks to Spain for taking on this task to address the mandate found in paragraph 3 of the document. The chair of the working group initiated discussions circulating documents summarizing work previously undertaken, and after discussion in the working group, the chair circulated documents which summarize the comments provided by members, including comments regarding policy assumptions that may have contributed to the uneven application of Article 7, paragraphs 4 and 5, provided guidance in order to continue the discussion of policy assumptions, and also identified draft recommendations of the Standing Committee. The working group had virtual meetings to focus its discussions, particularly on possible amendments to Resolution Conf 10.16 and Resolution Conf 12.3. So at the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee, the committee agreed to submit amendments to Resolution Conf 10.16 that was proposed by the working group. and these are contained in Annex 1 to the present document. The working group was not able to complete its mandate, but it did make progress, laying good foundation for work to continue after COP19. So the Standing Committee agreed to propose draft decisions to continue the work on this issue as found in Annex 2 to the present document. So the Conference of the Parties is invited to adopt the amendments to Resolution Conf 10.16 on specimens of animal species bred in captivity found in Annex 1 to the present document, adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 to the document, and delete decisions 18.172 and 18.173. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Standing Committee. I will take parties now. United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States appreciates the work of the Standing Committee on these challenging and complex issues, and in particular the efforts of Spain as chair of the Standing Committee's Intersessional Working Group. At the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee, the United States supported endorsement of the working group's proposed edits to Resolution Conf 10.16 Rev. However, we believe some of the Secretariat's comments on document CoP19 Doc 53 may warrant further reflection on some of the proposed edits to the resolution, which will be included in the discussions to be resumed, which we believe should be included in the discussions to be resumed during the next intersessional period. Consequently, we support adoption of the proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 10.16 Rev, with exception of replacing the word produced with conceived in paragraphs 1A and 1B. We disagree with the Secretariat's comments regarding the word specimen, which appropriately refers to whole animals, live or dead, as well as parts and derivatives as defined by the Convention. Additionally, while we take the Secretariat's point regarding the responsibility in determining when a given specimen has been bred in captivity, we believe that there is a role for both management authorities and scientific authorities, and support the Standing Committee's proposed amendments to paragraph 2B 2i and 2B 3i. We strongly support continuation of this work during the next intersessional period, but are concerned that the lack of clarity and direction in the instructions to the committees may set this exercise up for making only limited progress again. Therefore, while we support the intent of the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 to document COP19 Doc 53, we believe that there should include an additional instruction to the Standing Committee to develop clearer terms of reference and modus operandi and a roadmap to guide the work. We believe that a new paragraph A in draft decision 19.AA could be included to accomplish that, and we can provide language if appropriate. Finally, we support deletion of decisions 18.172 and 18.173. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United States. I will take your new paragraph now, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It would be a new paragraph under 19.AA directed to the Standing Committee to read, "The Standing Committee shall, in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees, develop specific terms of reference, including modus operandi and roadmap as appropriate, to guide the continuation of the review of trade in specimens of CITES listed animals and plants not of wild source."
Can I take your amendments after modus operandi again, please, United States?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Including modus operandi and a roadmap as appropriate to guide the continuation of the review of trade in specimens of CITES listed animals and plants not of wild source. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I have the European Union and then Canada. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. We support the European Union and its member states support the continuation of the work on captive breeding issues in the Animals Committee and the Standing Committee, and we think that an intersessional working group of the Standing Committee is necessary to continue the work done in the last intersessional period. The issues addressed are complex, and there was not enough time to discuss all the points in the mandate. Therefore, we support the proposed decisions in Annex 2. And I note the proposal from the US to make more concrete the mandate, and we would support that proposal. The Secretariat's advice to rethink the proposed changes in Resolution 1016 are well placed and are supported. We should not create new problems while trying to fix existing problems. I think that mainly concerns the point conceived instead of produced. Therefore, the issues identified by the Secretariat need to be discussed thoroughly. In our opinion, as proposed by the Secretariat, the best approach would be not to change Resolution 1016 now, but to reconsider during the next intersessional period and taking into account the issues identified by the Secretariat. If you think that the points can be addressed at this COP, we are happy to participate in this discussion. In addition to the issues raised by the Secretariat, we would like to refer to two further, more editorial amendments to Annex 1 that should also be addressed in the future work on this topic, or if we can do that today. It's the following. Point referring to the resolution. Point 2b, little I, big B3, an editorial change that replaces off by for by off. And I read that part of the text. When appropriate specimens of other sources are not available. That's just a small editorial comment. The next editorial comment tries to avoid a misunderstanding. In point 2b, 3 little I, here the link between breeding operation and species is missing. In the version before, there was a link to the breeding stock. Even though it may be clear what is meant, the lack of reference may constitute a loophole. It might be interpreted in a way that it would be sufficient if the operation just has to breed any species to F2, but not this specific species. And this is obviously not correct. Therefore, we recommend to insert of the respective species or something similar to that effect after the text in brackets F3, F4, etc., end of brackets, under big A, and after second generation offspring under big B. Thank you very much.
Thank you, European Union. I have Canada and then Zimbabwe. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to colleagues who have commented so far. Canada also recognizes that this is a complex topic. We recognize that this work is addressing the intentions of Article 7, paragraphs 4 and 5, and thus there is a lot of complexity for consideration. So while we recognize that the mandate had not been fulfilled, we are not alarmed by this. We think it is appropriate to take a deliberate and careful review, and as colleagues previous have mentioned, ensure that we are all coming to a well-founded common understanding. So in this regard, first of all, Canada supports the continuation of the decisions found in Annex 2, so we support the adoption of the decisions in Annex 2, and are thus comfortable with the deletion of the previous decisions 18.172 and 18.173. We note the U.S. addition to the first decision to the Standing Committee, and we can agree with that decision if it helps create a sense of common understanding of the intent of what we want to achieve. Regarding Resolution Conf 1016, we agree with the points raised by the United States, so we would agree to not include the revision of conceived and produced and take that matter for further discussion. We also agree with the United States that the other amendments found in paragraph 2 of Resolution Conf 1016, while noting the comments of the Secretariat, we are comfortable bringing those amendments forward. We note the editorial comments that were provided by colleagues from the European Union, and we don't have the exact language, but they seem to be generally acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. So my list has stayed static for some time, so I'm closing my party list. I will take Zimbabwe, and then the United Kingdom, and then China. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the Standing Committee for the preparation of document 53. We note that in paragraph 5 of this document, the Standing Committee did not have enough time to discuss all CITES policy assumptions. Madam Chair, we therefore recommend this issue proceeds by way of the establishment of an intersectional working group to fully address this complex but important issue I submit.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK thanks the Secretariat for this work and the work done by the working group. In terms of the proposed amendments to Conference Resolution 1016, we have some strong concerns with the proposed amendments put forward in this document. In particular, paragraphs 1A and B, the change of word produced to conceived in would not seem to include specimens produced through asexual reproduction. We also note that the word produced is used regularly in other resolutions to refer to specimens bred in captivity, for example, Conference Resolution 17.7. Overall, we consider the amendments in this document merit further discussion in the intersessional period and could be picked up in processes set out in the draft decisions and should be considered in light of the other discussions on captive breeding provisions. We don't think there is enough time at this COP to address these complex issues in an in-session working or drafting group. We can support the US suggestion that the terms of reference and modus operandi should be made clearer to help focus discussions. To that end, we would also like to suggest that separate discussions are established to allow suitable focus on issues specific to both animals and plants. We would therefore like to recommend a few minor amendments to the draft decisions as follows. In Decision 19AA, little a, we propose inserting the word both prior to CITES listed animals and plants not of a wild source. So the relevant part of the decision reads, as well as any amendment to other resolutions concerning provisions on trade in specimens of both CITES listed animals and plants not of wild source. And the same amendment to 19AA little b, so the decision reads, review issues and challenges in the application of the Convention for trade in non-wild specimens of both CITES listed animal and plant species. We suggest that in Decision 19BB, the words separately and together in their joint session be inserted in the first sentence. So it reads, in support of the Standing Committee's implementation of Decision 19AA, the Animals and Plants Committees shall separately and together in their joint session. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. China.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
China participated the international working group on this topic. In general, China concurs with the comments made by the Secretariat. First, replacing the term produced with conceived is not just an exercise in English semantics. It will lead to many problems, so we cannot support this amendment. Second, considering the differences in internal management among different parties, it is difficult to ask the CITES management authorities or scientific authorities which do not have such a mandate to carry on the task of parental stock management. Third, China supports the further deliberation on the amendments of ResConf 1016 by involving more concerned parties. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. So I think I am hearing some general agreement. I will just take a moment with the Secretariat to make sure we've jointly captured everything. I apologise, observers, just to keep us moving. I won't be able to take you on this item. Thank you, everyone. It's taking me a moment because we have some differing views about, particularly I'm speaking to the resolution amendments that are proposed. So I'm hearing some parties opposed to them in totality. I'm hearing some parties okay with some of them and not okay with others. I'm conscious that we do have some agreement on an intersessional process going forward. So I did want to come back to the European Union. You've made some text amendments, some suggested amendments in paragraph 2, but I did want to go back to your concerns about the other amendments and see if there was any amendments that we could pick up. What I'm trying to formulate in my head is whether we can pick up any of these amendments, because I'm hearing a bit of a split here, or whether it might be better to acknowledge these amendments and consider them a little bit more carefully in an intersessional period. So European Union, I'm interested what you can accept or your overall views on the best way forward. EU.
Thank you very much, Chair. I feel a bit uncomfortable now to be the decisive bit here on a point that is a little bit split, but that is pretty close together. I think what we can remove from any dissent is the change to the preamble, to have that there, because we had long discussions on this in the working group. And what we also can remove is all the stuff on conceived and produced. There we agree that we should keep with the old text. Then for the rest, on the one hand, it would be good to take a closer look. On the other hand, it would also be nice to have some results. And then on balance, then I would say, then maybe given the some concerns in the room, then maybe it's a little bit better to take another look at those comments. But I would have been more comfortable to be flexible, but if we have to be sort of tipping the balance, then I would be a bit more comfortable to tip it in the direction of taking a closer look again at the other two issues concerning the role of the different types of authorities and also on the wording of specimen. But maybe some other countries have a stronger opinion than the European Union and its member states have on these two other points.
Thank you, European Union. I didn't intend to suggest that you were the deciding vote. I just wanted to make, I'm the one who will sum up here, but I just wanted to make sure I understood clearly where you could agree and where you sort of shared some of the views about perhaps needing to take a little bit of a better look. I do agree with you that I think that the amendments to the preambular paragraph are something that we can agree. And I do agree with you that that there wasn't general support or there was some caution, I think, and some further discussions to be had variously from parties regarding the conceived versus produced language. So I think that we won't be proceeding with those amendments. I think I will propose on balance. I don't see any other parties. I'll give you my proposal on the resolution, and I'll see if anybody disagrees with me. Noting that we have, and we will come to the decisions, we have further work to do on this. We will have opportunities for further work. I think I would conclude that we agree the final preambular paragraph, the amendments to that final preambular paragraph. I would conclude that we don't agree to the deletion of produced and the insertion of conceived in all of the places where it occurs. And I would conclude that we don't agree to the amendments to paragraph 2, noting that we need to consider the matter further. Canada.
Just a point of clarification. So if I understood your summary correctly, Chair, we are accepting the preambular change. I'm presuming we're accepting the editorial in 1C, as that is not the produced conceived. And if I understood, we are making no changes to paragraph 2 of the resolution. Did I understand that?
That's as I have proposed we go, just because I'm hearing those are the areas where I'm sensing a little bit more caution, and I think perhaps the Standing Committee might be better placed with the support of the Animals and Plants Committee to navigate that issue rather than us here. So with the clarification from Canada, I think that that is our conclusion. Moving to the decisions in Annex 2. I did hear a lot of support for further work, so I think that we agree the decisions in Annex 2 with the amendment proposed by the United Kingdom and the US. I will take them in that order because the UK has suggested the insertion simply of both after in the phrase concerning provisions on trade in specimens of both CITES listed animals and plants not of wild source in both what is now in the draft paragraph A and paragraph B. The US has proposed actually a new paragraph A, which would result in consequential edits to the numbering of the subparagraphs. That reads, in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committees, develop specific terms of reference, including modus operandi and a roadmap as appropriate to guide the continuation of the review of trade in specimens of, I will take both CITES listed animals and plants not of wild source, if we pick up the UK's suggestion. So that would be new paragraph A in decision 19AA, and in the chapeau paragraph of decision 19BB at the end, we would add the suggestion of the United Kingdom to add separately and together in their joint session. And so I also conclude that we agree to delete decisions 18.172 and 18.173. Thank you. So we will move to COP19 document 56. Guidance on the term artificially propagated. This document has been submitted by the Plants Committee, so I would invite the chair of the Plants Committee to introduce the document. Oh, and the chair of the Plants Committee appears to have requested Australia to introduce the document. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing this document on behalf of the Chair of the Plants Committee. In accordance with paragraph B of decision 18.178, adopted at the 18th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, the Secretariat reported to the Plants Committee at its 25th meeting on the progress made in the implementation of decision 18.178 as recorded in PC 25 Compendium and PC 25 Doc 22 Addendum. The annex to PC 25 Doc 22 Addendum included draft guidance on terms related to the term artificially propagated, developed by UNEP WCMC at the request of the Secretariat with external funding from Switzerland. Draft decisions were proposed by the Secretariat for consideration by the Plants Committee, the purpose of which was to broaden the scope of the draft guidelines and to include all terms in the appendices related to artificial propagation, including terms related to cultivars, photosanitary certificates and artificially propagated hybrids from a non-annotated Appendix 1 species. Taking into account the recommendations contained in the above-mentioned documents, the 25th meeting of the Plants Committee established an in-session working group. On the basis of the work of this working group, the Plants Committee made comments and recommendations on the draft guidelines on artificially propagated, most of which have been incorporated into the draft guidelines on artificially propagated. The Chair of the Plants Committee approved the revised version of the guidance on the term artificially propagated for publication on the CITES website. This was done in February 2022. Subject to external funding, comments not addressed could be incorporated into future editions of the draft guidance. In paragraph 9 of COP19 Doc 56, the Conference of the Parties is invited to note the preliminary publication on the CITES website of the guidance on the term artificially propagated, adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to this document, and to delete decision 18.178. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. On behalf of the Chair of the Plants Committee, I'll open the floor to parties. I will take Republic of Korea, followed by the United States. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Korea would like to congratulate the Plans Committee and the Secretary on its work, preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulatory plans, which is the result of the implementation of Decision 18.178 posted on the CITES website. He also would like to underline its contribution to the elementary works of the parties. Korea agrees with the Secretary's comments that the work is the responsibility of Plans Committee and supports the draft decision amended by Secretariat. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Republic of Korea. United States.
Thank you, Chair. We echo the accolades expressed by our colleagues in the Republic of Korea, as well as our support for the adoption of the 2 draft decisions as amended by the Secretariat, including the deletion of Draft Decision 19CC, also as suggested by the Secretariat. We seek clarifications on 2 items during discussion of this document. The Secretariat amended the Draft Decision 19AA with the deletion of, I quote, commission the revision, end quote. However, the Secretariat did not indicate how the proposed work would be completed. The second item for which we seek clarification relates to the reported budget for the revisions to the document, estimated to be US $40,000, subject to external funding. This amount seems high given the cost to produce the preliminary guidance was $35,000. Finally, we do not agree with the Secretariat that this work may also preempt the work in document CoP19 Doc 53 on review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source. We see these as complementary, particularly as the work under document 53 has primarily focused on animals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. I will take the parties requesting the floor now and close my list. I will come back to the Secretariat if they would like an opportunity to respond to your questions. So I have Australia, followed by Georgia, and then Switzerland. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Providing guidance on the implementation of source codes ensures parties are supported to implement CITES as effectively as possible. In Oceania, parties value the existing resources available on the CITES website, in particular a guide to the application of CITES source codes. However, this guidance document now requires updating to ensure it reflects the existing source codes in use under CITES, including in particular source code Y. Australia would therefore like to propose the following amendments to those proposed by the Secretariat. 19AA, directed to the Secretariat, we'd like to insert a new little b that reads, review the existing guidance materials, specifically a guide to the application of CITES source codes, to ensure alignment with a finalised version of the preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulated plants, and report its findings to the Plants Committee for consideration. The rest of that 19AA would continue as is. With
Australia, can I have that again slowly, please?
Sure. Sorry, Chair. So a new little b, review the existing guidance materials, specifically a guide to the application of CITES source codes, to ensure alignment with a finalised version of the preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulated plants, and report its findings to the Plants Committee for consideration.
I think we need your phrase after the reference to the guide. Once more, please, Australia.
Sorry, Chair, which part did you want?
So we've captured up to the title of the guide to the application of the source codes. And after that, we take your language again, please.
Sure. To ensure alignment with a finalised version of the preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulated plants, and report its findings to the Plants Committee for consideration. We would like to amend 19BB, little a, to reinstate the language removed by the Secretariat at the end of the paragraph, where it currently has a strike through. So it would continue to say, and make recommendations to the Standing Committee and the Conference of the Parties as appropriate, and insert a new little b. Consider the report from the Secretariat on revising existing guidance materials to ensure alignment with the updated preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulated plants, comma, and if appropriate, comma, approve the update to a guide to the application of CITES source codes. Would you like me to read that again, Chair?
I think we have it.
Thank you, Chair.
So I will take Georgia, followed by Switzerland. Georgia.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to thank for the preparation of the guidance on the term of artificially propagated. This is indeed a very well-prepared document and useful for the parties. At the same time, as for every guidance document, we consider that based on the lessons learned from practical use of the document, it may need a further update, as well as to incorporate remaining issues as mentioned in the document. Therefore, we would support the draft decisions presented to us. We also support the Secretariat's amendment concerning the full inclusion of the code Y in the guidance. This code has particular importance for us, and we would highly benefit from further update of the guidance in this regard. We have also planned certain work on the assisted production plants, which we would be happy to share with the Plants Committee in due course. And we would also support the suggestion from Australia. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Georgia. So the final party I will take is Switzerland. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support amendments made by Australia in the draft decisions 19AA new B and in 19BB new B. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. In my efforts to attempt to include the observers as much as possible, I will take one very brief intervention from observers, but I think we've had a constructive discussion. I do have China requesting the floor. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just got something wrong with our phone. And we just take this opportunity to express our support to the amendments proposed by Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, China. So with that additional support from China, United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom would also like to support the amendments made by Australia and support the comments made by the USA with regards to CoP19 Doc 53 being used as complementary, as this does mainly focus on animals and not plants. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. So I think we're all in agreement. Thank you for the constructive discussion. So I noted that there was good support for the Secretariat's amendments. to the draft decisions. With the exception of the striking, the US suggested that we do not strike the language commission, the revision. We have then in decision 19AA, new paragraph little b from Australia. Review the existing guidance materials, specifically a guide to the application of CITES source codes to ensure alignment with the finalised version of the preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulated plants. United States, you might be commenting on my pickup on your amendment, United States.
Yes, Madam Chair. I wanted to just clarify, we did not oppose the deletion of that phrase, quote unquote, commission the revision. We just wanted a clearer understanding of how the work would be proposed for completion, as well as the costs that were expressed.
Thank you, United States. You have reminded me. I will ask the Secretariat, before I sum up, I will ask the Secretariat to address that. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, United States, for those requests for clarification. And regarding the language of commissioning the revision, it's just a matter of being consistent across all decisions, and whether the decision says revising, it doesn't imply how the Secretariat would address it. It might still be commissioned in anyway. From my perspective, knowing that the first version has been commissioned, I would expect that also to be the case with a revised version of the guide, and that would be independent of how it is phrased, and we just suggested that amended to be consistent across decisions. Regarding the clarification for the budget, I note that originally the draft decisions presented by the Plans Committee had language related to all regulatory aspects, which is a bit broader than what the Secretariat suggested in its comments. And the original budget as contained in annex, whichever annex of the document, referred to that broader version of the revision that goes beyond the more constrained revision that is currently proposed in the Secretariat revisions. That was our suggestion based on our understanding that there may be some preemption regarding the other work stream on specimen not of wild source. If the committee is of the opinion that it would be complementary rather than contradictory, we would be happy to use the wider revision as originally proposed, but that's up to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretariat. United States, did that address your questions? United States.
Thank you, Chair. And so it is our understanding that the estimated cost of $40,000 would cover the cost of the original broader scope, but the decisions have been revised. So I think I'm not quite clear, but we probably don't need to belabor much longer. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I think the Secretariat, they've advised that that was a cost for the broader study. Now that we have a narrower study, I think they're saying that might be revised. Okay. So with that, so I've summed up, prior to remembering to ask the Secretariat to address the United States questions, I've summed up our conclusion on draft decision 19AA directed to the Secretariat. Paragraph A, we will agree to the striking of commission the revision for consistency purposes, as the Secretariat has suggested. We have seen support for Australia's new paragraph little b in that decision. I have heard support for the adoption, for the agreement of decision 19BB. Australia has proposed that the existing text in paragraph A become paragraph little a, and that we retain the language proposed for strike through at the end of the decision. So we would maintain and make recommendations to the Standing Committee and the Conference of the Parties as appropriate. Then we would insert a new little b, which would read, consider the report of the Secretariat on revising existing guidance materials to ensure alignment with the updated preliminary guidance on terms related to the artificial propagation of CITES regulated plants, and if appropriate, approve the update to the guide to the application of CITES source codes. And then I have heard agreement to the Secretariat's suggestion on 19cc to strike 19cc. So noting the other comments in the discussion regarding Georgia, regarding source code Y and the guidance being a living document, and also the comments about the committee's belief that this work is complementary to the work being considered under CoP19 document 53. It's my conclusion that that's the agreement of the committee. And that we agree to delete decision 18.178. So I will move us then to document 57. Specimens grown from wild collected seeds or spores that are deemed to be artificially propagated. This document has been submitted by the Plants Committee in consultation with the Chair of the Standing Committee, and I understand the Chair of the Standing Committee has requested Australia introduce this document. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm introducing this document on behalf of the Plants Committee and Standing Committee. This document, CoP19 Doc 57, was submitted by the Plants Committee in consultation with the Chair of the Standing Committee. At its 18th meeting, the Conference of the Parties adopted for the Plants Committee decisions 18.179 to 18.181 on specimens that grow from seeds or spores taken from the wild, considered as artificially propagated. These decisions concern the implementation of paragraph 4 of Resolution Conf 11.11, Rev COP 18, on the regulation of trade in plants. This paragraph 4 deals with trade in specimens of artificially propagated Appendix 1 species. Progress in the implementation of the decisions under consideration has been transcribed in a report commissioned by the Secretariat and done by UNEP WCMC. This report is based on consultations with range states that have registered nurseries of Appendix 1 species. The Standing Committee noted the recommendations made by the Chair of the Plants Committee at the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee in accordance with Decision 18.180. Thus, the Conference of the Parties is invited to delete decisions 18.179 to 18.181 as they have been fully implemented. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. On behalf of the Chair of the Plants Committee, parties. I don't see any parties taking the floor, so I take it you are taking my assurance that I will take no comment as support for the recommendations. I'll open the floor for observers if you'd like to make any comments on this document. Observers? Not seeing any observers requesting the floor. I conclude that Committee 2 agrees to delete decisions 18.179 to 18.181. So the next item on our working program is 29.3, Malagasy ebonies and palisanders. I have had a message, Madagascar, that you'd request that we delay this matter to this afternoon. Can I just confirm that that's still suitable? Madagascar? Please give Madagascar the floor.
Oui, Madame la Présidente, Madagascar voudrait que le sujet sur les pois précieux sera discuté cet après-midi, en présence de Madame la Ministre. Merci.
Thank you, Madagascar. I think we can accommodate that based on your request and the agreement of the plenary to shift this to today. In the working program, I'm happy to come back to this afternoon. Perhaps during the break you can just confirm with the Secretariat what time might be most suitable so that I can arrange our afternoon. So we will move on then, committee, to document 86, products containing specimens of Appendix 2 orchids. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee. And I believe that Australia will be introducing this document. Australia.
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked to introduce this document by the Chair of the Plants Committee on behalf of the Standing Committee. I introduced document CoP19 Doc 86, products containing specimens of orchids included in Appendix 2, which was submitted by the Standing Committee. At its 18th meeting, the Conference of the Parties adopted decisions 18.327 to 18.330 on products containing specimens of orchids included in Appendix 2. The progress made in the implementation of these decisions was reviewed by the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting on the basis of the recommendations made by the Plants Committee and presented in paragraph 5 of document CoP19 Doc 86 by the Plants Committee and set out in paragraph 5 of document CoP19 document 86. At the meeting, the Standing Committee agreed that further work on orchid annotations will be undertaken in close collaboration with the Standing Committee's discussions on annotations in accordance with the recommendation of the Plants Committee in paragraph 5F of this document. The Standing Committee further agreed to invite this Conference of the Parties to adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 of document CoP19 document 86 and to propose the deletion of decisions 18.327 to 18.330. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. I will open the floor to parties. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom agrees that we need a better understanding of edible orchids in trade and identification of actions that need to be taken to improve the implementation of the Convention, and we support the adoption of the draft decisions as amended by the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We also would like to support the amendments made by the Secretariat in the draft decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, the Republic of Korea would like to thank the Standing Committee for preparing for this document, and also thanks to the government of Switzerland for providing a final support. Korea most supports the draft decision amended by Secretariat and the draft decision on Annex 1. Since the Secretariat version more reflects the current implementation, however, it concerns us that the report to CoP19 was not reviewed by the Plenary Committee. Therefore, we suggest an amendment to the draft decision in paragraph E in the Secretariat comments. In the third line in 19.AA, you would like to change Standing Committee to Plenary Committee. And we suggest retaining 90.BB, which directed the Plenary Committee, except that in the first line, we would like to change study to report. We propose an amendment to decision 90.CC to directed the Standing Committee reading is follows. 90.cc, the Standing Committee shall review the report referred to the in decision 90.AA and the recommendation of the Plans Committee and identify actions, etc. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Republic of Korea. Chile, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Nosotros apoyamos la propuesta original. Gracias.
Thank you, Chile, European Union, and then China, European Union.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On behalf of the EU and its member states, we generally support the draft decisions. We have only minor textual suggestions to make the text a little bit more flexible. So in decision 19BB, we suggest to add in the very end or the conference of the parties as appropriate. So the text of the decision will read, the Plans Committee shall consider the study as per decision 19AA and make recommendations on how to improve CITES implementation for Appendix 2 listed orchids to the Standing Committee or to the conference of the parties as appropriate. And we also suggest to add as appropriate at the end of the decision 19CC, which would then read, the Standing Committee shall review any recommendations of the Plans Committee and make recommendations to the conference of the parties as appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, European Union. China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China supports the amendment proposed by the Republic of Korea. Thank you.
Thank you, China. I will take the United States, followed by Peru. United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support adoption of the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to the document as amended by the European Union. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United States. Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. El Perú apoya el documento con los proyectos de decisión planteados por la Secretaría y nos gustaría unirnos a las pequeñas enmiendas realizadas por la Unión Europea.
Thank you, Peru. So that exhausts my speakers list. Do need to take a moment to reflect. If there are any observers who'd like to take the floor on this item, I will open the floor to you. I do not see any observers, so I will take a moment. Thank you, everyone. I will invite the Secretariat to just make a comment on their amendments to specifically draft decision 19AA, which I think might give us some clarity, because I have some parties in support of the amendments from the Secretariat, but a number of parties speaking to the original decisions and making amendments on those. And I just want to make sure that we are in agreement on what we're picking up and what we're not from the Secretariat's suggestions. So, Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Chair. To quickly explain the intention and the rationale of the Secretariat revisions to the proposed draft decisions as agreed by the Plans Committee. At the time of the Plans Committee, there was not yet available funding and result of a study that we undertook on orchid specimen and food products, which is now available. And the Secretariat revisions to the proposed draft decision 19NA reflects the availability of the study, which we think is relevant for the CITES bodies to consider. It shows considerable trade in orchid specimen and food products that seems to not be regulated under CITES, but we think it should. And our proposed revisions reflect that we have limited resources that we would like to invest where we see the highest conservation benefit, and we believe that this study should be considered. So this is why we have introduced additional language to that end in decision 19AA. And considering the prioritization, we proposed that the original language regarding the exemption of finished orchid products containing orchid specimen would be second priority after the study on orchid specimen and food products. So this is our intention, and we just note that if we go with the original language, the study that's now available that we consider highly relevant would not anymore be referenced in decision 19AA because it wasn't available at the time of the Plans Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I would, in the efforts of finding a constructive way forward, I would just like to come back to the parties who spoke in support of the original amendments and see if you would like to consider whether you would like to pick up any of the Secretariat's suggestions, as the Secretariat has just explained, particularly those. The Republic of Korea also mentioned the study on the international trade in edible orchids, so I take it that the Republic of Korea is interested in having that document picked up somehow in the draft decisions. But I had Chile, the European Union, the United Kingdom and Peru all speaking with preference for the original decisions. So I wonder if any of those parties might prefer, might reconsider whether or not they would want the reference to the study picked up in the decisions. I also, just for clarity, I think in regard to the Secretariat's comments, I've seen support for maintaining decision 19BB. So I'm talking specifically to 19AA, United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would absolutely support consideration of the report on international trade in edible orchids, but we would note that the decisions as agreed and presented in Annex 1 go beyond that. So we would not want to limit it solely to that particular issue, but keep it broader as per Annex 1. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United States. I think that's clear. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to clarify that United Kingdom supported the draft decisions as amended by the CITES Secretariat, and we could also support the amendments by the EU. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I think on that basis, we might just take a moment to make sure I'm being clear, but I think that perhaps we can pick up and port across some of the language from the Secretariat's amendments in 19AA. I will take a second to think about how to do that. Okay, so I think we have a way forward. I think I can summarise what the Secretariat's suggestion on this is, but the suggestion from the Secretariat, which I think will address the suggestions we've had here, is that they will pick up their language from their amended 19AA regarding submitting the outcomes of the study on international trade in edible orchids, information document CoP19 Inf 9, for the consideration of the Plants Committee, is what I've heard, together with recommendations on how the convention can be better implemented for the species concerned. We would insert that as new paragraph little a under 19AA, and then we would just consequentially renumber the rest of the decision in Annex 1 to maintain, as the US has requested, the broader study. We would agree, so my proposal is that we agree with that on the way forward. I think that's a good compromise. It addresses the concerns about not losing the work in the study and making sure that the Plants Committee considers the document. Then we would take 19BB for the Plants Committee to consider the studies as per decision 19AA. I think with the plural of the two studies, I think that's an efficient way forward. With the addition from the EU at the end of that decision, or the Conference of the Parties as appropriate. And then we would take the original decision 19CC with the addition from the European Union at the end as appropriate. With the suggestion from the, with maintaining the reference to the Plants Committee that the Republic of Korea pointed out. United States?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support your recommended way forward. We would just note in the new paragraph 19.AA presenting the outcomes of the study on international trade in edible orchids that that activity does not need to be subject to external funding, availability of external resources. So we would just need to amend that chapeau sentence for 19.AA. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United States, as always, for your precision. So noting that the submission of the outcomes of the study on international trade in edible orchids is not subject to the availability of external resources. If you allow us just to edit that paragraph to make sure that that's clear, I propose that this is the way forward agreed by the committee. And in concluding, I will also note that we agree to delete decisions 18.327 to 18.330. So I have gratefully had agreement from the interpreters for a 15-minute extension to this session, because what I would like to do is see how far we can get into the afternoon session to accommodate all of the COM docs that we have to take this afternoon. Gabon, I have you requesting the floor. Gabon.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'interviens en tant que présidente du comité pour les plantes. En raison d'un conflit d'agenda, je n'ai pas pu assister à la séance et à la présentation des points 56, 57 et 87. Je pensais avoir le don d'ubiquité, mais malheureusement, je ne l'ai pas encore acquis. Aussi, je tenais à remercier vivement mon collègue du comité pour les plantes, en l'occurrence le représentant de la région Océanie, pour avoir brillamment mené cette tâche à ma place. Merci. Au revoir.
Thank you, Chair of the Plants Committee. We're certainly pleased to have you back, even though we have finished talking about plants. So with everyone's indulgence, we will take document 78 on tortoises and freshwater turtles, testudine species, and just reiterating that the interpreters have been very gracious in giving us an additional 15 minutes. So our session will go to 15 minutes past 12. So CoP19 document 78, tortoises and freshwater turtles, has been prepared by the Secretariat. So I will invite the Secretariat to introduce it. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the present document has been prepared by the Secretariat and provides reporting on the implementation of decisions 18286 to 18291 on tortoises and freshwater turtles. The document elaborates on the implementation of decision 18286 by Madagascar and 18287 by the Standing Committee, as well as the recommendations directed to Madagascar agreed by the committee. It further includes reporting on the identification guide to tortoises and freshwater turtles, parts, products and derivatives in trade, developed in accordance with Decision 18288. In this regard, the Secretariat proposed draft decisions 19AA, paragraphs B and C, and 19BB, paragraph B, for consideration by the Conference of the Parties as presented in Annex 1. The document also elaborates on activities conducted to build upon the outcomes of the CITES Tortoise and Freshwater Turtles Task Force, as required by Decision 18289. Excuse me. The Secretariat notes that illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles continues to be a matter of concern and highlights the value of national operations specifically targeting this illegal trade, as well as the value of international events convened to facilitate collaboration. Considering the ongoing nature of illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles, the Secretariat proposes new draft decisions 19AA paragraph A and 19BB paragraphs A and C as presented in Annex 1. The Conference of the Parties is invited to adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 and to delete decisions 18286 to 18291 on tortoises and freshwater turtles as they have been implemented. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Parties? India, you have the floor, followed by the European Union. India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India is very concerned about the conservation status of turtles and freshwater turtles. Many species of turtles and freshwater tortoises are classified as critically endangered, vulnerable, or near threatened, and their status continues to deteriorate. The CITES Appendix 2 listing of many of these species need to be reviewed to ascertain whether Appendix 1 listing are more appropriate. We support the adoption of the draft decision in Annex 1 of the document and urge range and consumer states to take effective enforcement action against the illegal trade in turtles and tortoises. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. European Union, followed by the United States. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We thank the Secretariat for reporting on the progress of decisions 18.286 to 18.291. We agree they have been implemented and may be deleted. We also thank Madagascar for their continued effort to respond to and address wildlife crime, including illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles. We are, however, concerned about the continued high levels of illegal trade in tortoises and freshwater turtles, which is compounded by high rates of deforestation causing habitat loss. We would like to especially highlight the 4 terrestrial Astrochelys and Pyxis species, which are all assessed as critically endangered by the IUCN Red List with rapidly declining populations. Astrochelys inifora, the plowshare tortoise, is highly sought after for the illegal pet trade. With an estimated population size of near 200 mature individuals restricted to 5 small subpopulations, the species is predicted to go extinct within the next generation if current threats continue unabated. Both Pyxis species also face extinction primarily due to high rates of habitat loss. Pyxis arachnoides, the spider turtle, has in the past decade come under increasing direct exploitation for consumption due to the rapid population decline of Astrochelys radiata, the radiated tortoise. Therefore, the EU would like to propose a follow-up decision to request Madagascar to present a comprehensive conservation strategy for its threatened turtle species, at least for the 4 terrestrial Astrochelys and Pyxis species, to be assessed by the Animals Committee at its 33rd meeting and the subsequent Standing Committee. Thank you, Chair, and if we may, we can read up the decisions. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to send them or give them to you in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Yes, I will take them slowly, please.
So the first will be directed to Madagascar, 19cc, reading: Madagascar is encouraged to A. Prepare a comprehensive conservation strategy for its 4 critically endangered species, Astrochelys radiata, Astrochelys inifora, Pyxis arachnoides, and Pyxis planicauda, taking into consideration the multifaceted threats of collection for local consumption and the international trade, compounded by habitat loss, full stop. B.
Just a pause, European Union, while I
Yes.
try to catch the end of the paragraph.
Sorry.
Thank you, EU. I will ask you to email this later, but if you can carry on with your new decision.
So B would read: present the work prepared under Decision 19cc paragraph A to the Animals Committee for assessment at its 33rd meeting.
Thank you, EU. We've caught that now.
And to continue, the next decision would be directed to the Animals Committee. Would read 19EE, the Animals Committee shall A. At its 33rd meeting, review the conservation strategy reported by Madagascar under Decision 19cc and submit recommendations to the Standing Committee and the Secretariat as appropriate. And then we have one last decision. Directed to the Standing Committee and the Secretariat, 19FF, the Standing Committee and the Secretariat shall A. Consider the recommendations provided by the Animals Committee under Decision 19EE and prepare new decisions directed to Madagascar outlining future work to combat the ongoing threats of illegal collection and trade of the 4 Astrochelys and Pyxis species. And finally, point B, report at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties on the implementation of Decision 19cc and provide recommendations as per Decision 19FF, paragraph A, as appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. United States, followed by Senegal. United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports adoption of the draft decisions. However, we also note that, like the EU has mentioned, that the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting adopted a number of additional recommendations directed at Madagascar and requested the Secretariat to continue to monitor illegal trade in tortoise and freshwater turtle species as it affects Madagascar. In light of this, we support the additional draft decisions just mentioned, and we also suggest one additional draft decision that would refer to paragraph 4, Part B of this document and ask Madagascar to undertake the activities listed there. And I can list that specific text if that's useful.
Thank you, United States. And just when you do, be clear which decision we are adding the additional text under.
This would be directed to Madagascar. Excuse me. Under 19BB. I'm sorry, under 19CC, the new text, thank you. It would say Madagascar is encouraged to undertake the activities in CoP19, document 79, paragraph 4B, little I through little 4. Additionally, we strongly agree with the Secretariat's and Standing Committee's comments that much work remains to stop the trafficking of tortoises and freshwater turtles in Madagascar. And we comment briefly that we echo our partners in saying that turtle crime is serious crime. Turtles are among the most imperiled animal groups on Earth, and more countries are recognizing turtle trafficking as a major and serious threat. Turtle species native to the United States can be affected by overharvesting to supply international demands, and this is why the U.S. is proposing to include several species of turtles in Appendix 2. The U.S. is one of the world's biodiversity hotspots for turtles, and we are working to conserve our native species. Lastly, we wanted to note that we also remain concerned about ongoing declines in turtle and tortoise populations globally, and the U.S. Congress passed a law in 2019.
I'm sorry, United States. We've gone over time. I have 4 more parties requesting the floor. If that's okay, I will take them. Thank you very much for your additions. I will take Senegal and then Peru. Senegal.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Les changements climatiques, la pression sur les habitats et le commerce international de ces espèces ont fini par faire des tortues terrestres d'eau douce des espèces menacées. Conformément aux travaux de la 114e session du comité permanent, le Sénégal voudrait soutenir les résolutions qui ont fait des recommandations au secrétariat pour veiller sur ces espèces, surtout quand il s'agit des milieux insulaires. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. Peru, you have the floor, followed by Thailand, and then I will take Burkina Faso as my last speaker. Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente. Voy a ser bastante breve. Queremos agradecer a la Secretaría por la presentación del documento y tomamos nota de los esfuerzos realizados por Madagascar. Asimismo, queremos expresar que en un contexto general el Perú también comparte las preocupaciones ya expresadas por otras partes respecto de la sobreexplotación de determinadas especies de tortugas con diferentes fines. Por lo tanto, apoyamos los proyectos de decisión propuestos y hacemos un especial énfasis en la necesidad de difundir la guía de identificación y sus respectivas traducciones. Gracias.
Thank you, Peru. Thailand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thailand supports the adoption of the draft decision contained in Annex 1 to the present document and support suggestions made by India. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thailand and Burkina Faso.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Le
Faso partage les mêmes préoccupations que certains pays ici en rapport avec les tortues d'eau douce et les tortues terrestres. Pour ce qui concerne dans mon pays, il y a vraiment la menace et nous remarquons que la question de commerce ne fait que se développer et c'est assez inquiétant. Et donc nous appuyons ce document présenté par le secrétariat, mais nous avons été sensibles également en rapport avec les propositions des États-Unis et nous voudrions que nous appuyions également ces propositions d'ajout qu'a proposé les États-Unis. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. I have 1 minute for an observer before I sum up. If anyone would like the floor. Seeing no observers, I will just take a moment to make sure we've captured everything. I would ask that the 2 significant new decisions are sent to us in writing so we can make sure we have them absolutely correct, particularly the scientific names. That was beyond me in this session, but if you give me a moment, I will come back to you with a conclusion. Actually, I was going to ask Madagascar, if you would like the floor, I will give you the floor. Thank you.
Merci Madame la Présidente de m'avoir donné la parole. Merci au secrétariat d'avoir fait le rapport. Nous souhaitons, Madagascar souhaite, avant de conclure, Madame la Présidente, de reprendre cet après-midi afin que nous puissions évaluer les nouvelles propositions des partis. Merci.
That's fine, Madagascar. Would you, if we get those to you in writing, will that assist you over the lunch break?
Oui, je confirme, Madame.
Okay, with the request of Madagascar for a little bit more time to consider the quite significant language that we've heard today. I understand it took me some time to keep up with it too. I think we will thank the interpreters for their indulgence of several more minutes on our session. We have agreed to start the afternoon session with all of the remaining COM documents, so please come prepared to deal with those. I'm proposing taking them in order, the remaining ones as published on the CITES website. Then we will come back to our working program. We still have quite a bit to do, although I'm very pleased with where we got to this morning. So with that, please enjoy your lunch breaks. Don't forget your cards. Please leave your receivers, etc., etc. I will see you at 1:45.